I'm listening to some bugged out stuff only because it's on. This was another dead body. It's upside down on the bench, but that's no big deal. It's a Crown D150A, Series 2. It was a purchase off our favorite auction site for $9.99. Upon getting it unboxed and on the bench, it sounded terrible. It was terrible. I at first thought that it had blown something up. It was so severely distorted and cut off. I immediately started with the normal checks of input and output offset, the input offset controls and output so offset controls. It is the later series with the UA 739 quad. It's not quad. Double IC. I looked around. I actually had gone as far as I unsoldered the output transistors. I unsoldered the leads from the driver transistors in an effort to isolate the pre-driver, because those are a little problematic. That really wasn't the case. I was unsoldering wires for about 2 or 3 hours. I couldn't find any bad devices. I was even using the good old Super Cricket, which is a lifesaver. Buy one. I found nothing wrong, but it still sounded terrible. I listened to it and messed with it, and then I decided to, so let me figure out if I could figure out what exactly it was doing. It was at that point, when I sat and actually listened to it, that I was able to figure it really wasn't. Oh, and by the way, both the IOC LEDs were lit. That's what I saw, and that's what led me to think it was an output trans or driver trans or something. But there really was no DC at the output. Very little on one side. I couldn't really zero it out with the controls, so I wasn't sure. At first I suspected the large filter caps, because when they go away they start to exhibit problems like that. Crowns have distinct failure modes. They'll either be blown up, you have DC at the output, plus or minus from the supply, or they have these crazy odd problems with noise and buzzing and distortion and what have you, and it'll usually wind up being Mr. Number 1, Mr. Number 2, or Mr. Number 3. In this case, Mr. Number 3, I believe it was around 10-20 microfarad. It was gone. It read nothing. I have a really neat little tool here, and I was able to make up some leads, and I used my little, hold it, let's get it out. Ah, here's looking at you. Use that. The good old Heathkit auto ranging capacitance meter, which told me that that thing, instead of being 10 microfarads, was maybe like 0.03, which was no good. This is a very bugged out friggin' station. So once we had figured out that that had gone away, I changed it, and that's that. So your good old crowns, your good old crowns,
live recording of
typical failure modes are going to be blown up, check outputs drivers. A lot of times when outputs leave, you'll wind up with a problem with no bias. There's little jobs here on the heat sink. Change them, they'll be collected to emitter shorted. And the other thing that happens once in a while when you still can't get bias, next to one of the negative drivers you'll see there's a little TO92 case job that's going to wind up being leaky. Pull it out and change it. I think it's one of those 4215s, 2 and 4215. And here's the other one here. They're going to wind up being leaky, and what happens there is you're running positive voltage, it starts to leak through, and it just kills any bias that the thing tries to develop. So two things: no bias, check these jobs mounted on the heat sink, check these jobs next to the negative drive pre-driver, pre-driver. And the other thing is make sure you have decent bias. You're supposed to wind up with 0.310 to 3.325, which is 310 millivolts to 325 millivolts. And these resistors you can select to dial the bias in. We're really good. They tell you it's supposed to only draw 20 watts at an idle, but you know, that could be a little misleading. I guess it depends on the shape of your transformer. This thing's drawing 40 watts at an idle. It's not getting hot. The bias is pretty much on the money. They're around 0.30, well, 320 millivolt, 312 millivolt in that area there, which is a touch low. I think 340 is better, but I ain't going to say that. Don't forget I said that. So it's running really good. It's drawing a little more than Crown would spec it out to draw. They say around 30, less than 30, and typical 20. But, you know, I don't know how great the caps are. I did check them and wound up with about 8100 microfarad. They're supposed to spec 9300 microfarad units. So I guess they're a little off. They could be going away a little bit, which could account for some extra current draw, although they're not getting warm. The transformer doesn't get warm. I don't know. You know, then again, I'm probably, with my line voltage, I'm probably up around 122. And I probably would want to back that down to 120. And that would probably drop the draw down. But still, it's going to be way over what they're saying. So I really don't care too much for that. But in any event, working again.
He also created one for fellow
check and change. 1, 2, 3. Change them. You may have a problem. You really can't isolate. Change those and continue your troubleshooting. I'm quite sure it'll make life easier. And remember again, if there's no bias, you got these little jobs right here. I think I would call, one of them was Q8, I believe, on the board. The other one being the other channel, Q108, I'm not really sure. But they're right next to the negative pre-driver. And they can lead to a lot of problems with bias too. But that's it. A nice amp. I really like Crown stuff. Crown stuff deserves a lot of credit. They're really good. Yeah, the push button is gone, but the switch is still there and still works. So yeah, the IOC lights are on now because it powered it down. But nice amplifier and working again. Working again. I just wish I had the cover for the circuit board and a cover for the trans and filter caps, but not necessary. Just got to keep away from it. Okay, that's that.